Is it red?
Oh, red is on.
Can you guys hear me okay? Can't hear you.
Yes.
All right, it's 6:05, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
The United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
All right, well, thank you guys for joining us this evening. It's always fun to have a bunch of new faces here at the round table. And I know I always look forward to coming together and having a meeting with the city as well to have updates and share information between the two of us. So thank you guys for coming over here tonight and joining us. We really appreciate it. We are going to get started with a City of Sherwood update from Craig. So I'm going to pass it over to you and let you get started.
Awesome, thank you. Just a couple things tonight. I just want to, you probably all know that the Ped Bridge over Sunset has been started back in March. Substantial completion is going to be September 2025. And the contractor will still be working out there after September 2025 till probably the end of December of 2025. Also, a couple other projects we have going on at the school district, in the school district areas. Archer Glen, we're gonna be doing some paving out there this summer. The plan is to have Northwest Natural Gas, as they're scheduled to come in as soon as the school is out and replace the gas line there in the street in Sunset. And then that's about a 3 or 4 week job, and then our contractors will come in and pave. Same as at Middleton, Trimble will be being paved after school's out, and also Meineke Roundabout after school's out will be paved. And then we're about a third of the way done with our Sherwood Broadband Fiber to the Home project. So probably here in about 4 weeks, we'll be at a third. So, and that's really the update tonight, unless you guys have any questions. Couple things on the bridge. There's a switch through PGE that's about 80 weeks out, so that could delay towards the end of the project. As well as right now, you'll probably not see, you probably won't see a lot of work going on out there because it's about a 7 to 8 months to get the steel parts. And then it'll be fabrication for 2 months after that. So before you actually see real work going on out there with installing the bridge, so.
Craig, do you mind telling them a little bit about the traffic study we did on Sunset and what we're looking at for safety improvements toward the 99 side?
Yes, I can do that. So a couple things on that, Sunset, so we applied, Joy's gonna talk about the safe routes to school tonight, what we applied for there for the intersection of Timbrel and Sunset. We are also looking at, I guess it would be Woodhaven. There's 2 turn lanes coming, there's a turn lane and right now it's 2 lanes going into Sunset. We're looking at making one of them a right turn only into the subdivision, so you don't have 2 lanes going in, as well as with some crosswalk updates, which will probably be another project of, that we'll eventually work on with Joy for a grant. And then there's another plan in the future for a crosswalk down, I guess, towards Heatherwood, down by the townhomes there. So also a couple things that the council will probably look at, I would say in the next year or so is the police department did some studies out there, and there has been some speeding issues out there. So we'll look and see how we can improve that as well. And I'll let Joy talk about the safe routes to school, what's gonna go on at Sunset and Trimble. So is that good for you? Okay.
I do have one question for you. What is the road I'm talking about? Is it Kruger? The one that goes right in front of the church, countryside?
Yes, that's Kruger.
Kruger, okay. That, I know, I've been talking to a few different people about that. I would love to see that somewhere on the city's agenda to take a look at that road and putting in some speed bumps, because I know especially right now with it being baseball season, we're sitting on that road for hours every week and cars fly down that road, and it is wild how fast they're going down that road right in front of that church. And many times I thought, oh, a couple of speed bumps right there would really do us a solid just to slow some people down. And I'm not sure if that's something you guys can take a peek at.
We can actually take a look. That is a county road, but we can
Okay.
work with the county to actually see what they can actually do.
And I'm happy to help too. So if there's calls that I can help make, I'm totally happy to do that, not just pass the buck to you
Yeah.
guys, but I'm not sure who to get in touch
Yeah.
with.
No, we can see what we can do with the county.
That would be awesome. Go ahead.
I just, actually, this is something that I keep thinking about every time I drive it, but when you said the road name, it made me think of it. So Meineke, is it still Meineke up in front of Stella Olson? Or is it, it is? So between Stella Olson and the roundabout, kind of going down that hill, you can see where it's been like patched over and over and over again. It actually gets like really slick when it's rainy and, I don't know, I've slid on it a couple times and I've had my boys slide on it as well, who are young drivers. Just because there's no grip on all that patching there. And then when we had that ice storm, I know of a couple people that had some fender benders over there because it's so, all the patching, I don't know what you call it, but like it just looks like wiry. Anyway, it gets really slick when it's wet. Is that something you guys are looking at improving at all?
This is the first I've heard of it.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, if you drive it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, especially if it's wet and you're kind of going down the hill and around the corner, you can,
So is it
you hit
before-
one wrong and your car,
Is it before you
slides.
get to the bridge coming down on the hill?
yes.
Okay, we'll look at it and see.
Yeah.
If there's something we can do.
Yeah, it's pretty, we can get pretty slick there.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else? I definitely saw the big structure sitting on the side of the road by the high school. And I thought, what in the heck is that? And then I'm like, oh, pedestrian bridge. We're finally getting moving on that. So that'll be exciting to start to see that go up, even though that sounds like a pretty long process for you guys. Yeah. Okay, well, then if there's nothing else, I'll turn it over to Dr. Lyon for district update.
So, you know, it's interesting because when we had all that pressure to open that back gate at the high school, one of the chief concerns was the speed of the cars, those kids coming down that hill. And we need to really watch that because that is a really dangerous situation. Because we don't really have, the church is so gracious to allow us to park there for baseball games, but there's no crosswalk. And so people are close to that road and coming and going with kids, and that downhill traffic is blasting. It is something that we should take care of. And I know it's not a city issue, but there should be something on that. And it was Jim Rose who identified that as a concern right at the A1. So I see that. I see what you were talking about in that regard. So that's it for me on roads. I would just like to say it's been enjoyable to get to know Kristen and Craig in the monthly meetings that we have regarding the city and school district partnership. And I was speaking with Kristen yesterday about, and she agrees, the importance of keeping this thing strong with the new superintendent and crafting some opportunities for kids and for ways that the city and the school district can continue to collaborate and work together. And I really applaud both the city and the school district on sticking to this structure of a meeting in the fall and a meeting in the spring, because you've got to provide these, as you know, it's not always exciting, but it's really important. It's really important. And just to have the time to dialogue about roads and bridges and school events and that kind of thing is really important. For us, it's kind of like three things are going on in the springtime that are this crescendo for us. And one is, of course, the business of running the schools. And this is the most intense time. We're coming out of it. The February, March, April is the most intense instructional time in our schools, in my opinion. And we are now starting to phase into wrapping everything up with the state testing and the AP tests and the exams and the college decisions and all of that. So it's a very, very exciting time. It's really exciting for the high school that has to deal with dress code issues. That's as the weather gets warm. So we deal with all kinds of things in the spring, but it's really an exciting time for students who kind of see the end, but it's not there yet. But good things are happening. So the second big thing we do is we hire, and we start to look at 24, 25. And we put out a press release last week that has all of the administrative hires. We have 6 schools, and we are welcoming 3 new principals to our 6 schools. And we're super excited about the 3 individuals that were selected. And our role at district office is to provide that structure and supports for them to ensure that they are successful in their first year of transition. And so we're working diligently on that. But it's very meaningful to parents, obviously, to know that there is this baton pass to the next person, and that person understands the culture of the school and understands what the staff needs and what the parents need. And we feel like we've got that in place really strongly with the set of hires that we have. So as some of us go and new faces come, it is pretty exciting to see all of that happening. And kind of the underlying theme of direction that we tell the applicants and we talk about in our interviews is we have a really, really exceptional thing going in Sherwood. Don't mess it up, because it's special. And we all worked very, very hard. And I have watched these 2 years in awe of this community and how coherent and cohesive it is. And what the city does for kids in this community is extraordinary. And so we take those values very, very seriously when we look at candidates and talk about what we want in regards to school leadership and district office leadership. And then the third thing is the thing that keeps Gary up at night, and that is building a budget for the next year. And building a school district budget it's part a Ouija board, it's part kind of gasping at the limited resources, and it's taking this whole enterprise and trying to move it forward with many unknowns and many very problematic things in place. And we don't know, we know our funding for next year, but after that, we don't know because the legislature will meet again and start talking about the funding for the years after. There are deep structural problems in the way that Oregon schools are funded. Our governor has acknowledged that. Beginning with, they have this cost of living thing that they roll up, and it doesn't even come close to matching what our true cost increases are in regards to labor and electricity and all of those things. So it's very difficult to put a budget together, and Gary has done a really good job. We're getting to that end point. And just keep this in mind. We have about a $60 million general fund budget that we operate every year. Over 80% of that 60 million is to pay people, teachers primarily, classified staff, cafeteria help, custodians. We are a people business. And so when people talk about, well, make this cut or make that cut, you really get down very quickly to just talking about cutting people. And that impacts kids in classrooms. So that's the overlay in our world is it's very, very difficult to change the trajectory of anything because we are a people business. And so that's some of that tension that you see. But with that, we have had a great spring, and knock on wood, we will bring home this school year successfully. And early weather watching on graduation night looks good. Looks good. So yeah, don't jinx it. Right. Every time I jinx it. Yeah, well, okay. It's terrible. All right. And that's all I have, Abby.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And the spring's a super exciting time to look forward to in the school, and hard work for you guys, but fun to look forward to graduation and prom and all the festivities. And it's just a really fun time to be around schools. All right. Up next, we're going to have a Sherwood West update from Joy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Can you guys see me?
Not really.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we will make do with what we have, and I'll be on my tippy toes. Anyway, good evening, Board of Directors, Mayor Rossner, City Councilors, Joy Chang, Interim Planning Manager for the City of Sherwood. Let's see if I can work this here. Nope. Nope. So tonight, I just wanted to give you guys a brief update in regards to the Sherwood West concept plan. We're going to talk about the accepted concept plan itself, the North District refinement area of what we did, the UBG expansion request that we just submitted to Metro, but also next steps in regards to timeline. Great. This image here to the right is basically the accepted concept plan that we've been doing for several years. There's definitely diverse land use. There's a great connection as far as transportation system. There's going to be ample parks, trails, and open spaces. As you already know that there are going to be needs in regards to schools and public uses. It was our understanding through the Citizen Advisory Committee where Jim Rose was part of, the schools haven't identified, as far as the district hasn't identified specific properties. And so what we have done to acknowledge that need is on the lower right-hand corner, we've just identified a 30-acre need for middle school or a 10-acre need for an elementary school. That's how we're representing in regards to what, as far as to scale, how much land would be needed for those types of schools. So one of the key elements in regards to the uses in Sherwood West, while it's unique, we have the typical types of homes like residential low, residential medium high, multifamily homes, which would be like apartments. But what is unique with Sherwood West is that we are actually going to create specific zoning that only allows for middle housing and also cottage clusters. Middle housing being duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and then cottage clusters are those really small homes, typically 900 square foot building footprint and usually about 1,500 square feet. They're great starter homes or great retirement homes also. So, and having these types of housing will also allow for affordability in regards to, because of the mix of housing types. So the refinement that we did do consists of the employment, the North District, in regards to uses that are specific to employment. Again, it's 250 gross acres. And this land is going to support living wage employment opportunities for Sherwood residents. Mixed employment includes a mix of office, tech, healthcare, light industrial, warehouse, and limited retail uses. This type of development typically requires large sites, at least 40 to 50 acres, flat topography, and good access to transportation. And that's why the North District was targeted. Ultimately, there is a projection of a total of 4,500 jobs that would be created for the North employment area. The next specific zoning that is unusual is hospitality zone. And this is predominantly, you can just tell, along Highway 99, just north of Chapman, across the street from Brookman. So this is a new concept for Sherwood. And it emerged from the discussion from the Citizen Advisory Committee. The hospitality zone would provide intentional locations for uses such as hotels, motels, restaurants, wineries, and similar uses that could capitalize on Sherwood West location as the entrance to wine country. These uses typically rely on strong visibility to the public, and that's why it's identified within Highway 99W. So what are the next steps in regards to Sherwood West? So here's the overall timeline, and I did say that this has been multi-year effort, and I do want to say that we are really happy to have submitted our land use application as far as the urban growth boundary expansion request to Metro. It was due on April 5th, and we got it in by April 4th, which is awesome. It reminds me of my college years. So the earliest that Metro will be making a decision on this will be fall or winter of this year. The next steps would be comprehensive planning and future zoning. That's 1.5 to a 3-year process. We're going to dig down even more because the concept plan is like brushstrokes. The comprehensive plan, we're going to go down and look at natural resource protection. We're going to look at residential and employment zone details. We're also evaluating master planning and creating most likely annexation policies related to phasing of development. In infrastructure plan and funding strategy will also be during this time, and then master plans for the transportation system plan, water, sewer, and all the utilities. Within this phase, we will definitely continue community engagement. Again, it's 1.5 to 3 years in regards to once, if and when Metro approves our UGB asks. It would be 1 to 3 years after in regards to finalizing the comprehensive plan. People always ask, well, when do you think we can break ground in regards to actual development? I would say if you're near infrastructure and transportation needs, facilities are there, we'll be fortunate if it's within 5 years. That's optimistic. So that is it in regards to Sherwood West. I can answer any questions you may have.
Can I just add a little bit? If you
Yeah.
don't mind. Joey mentioned it in there, but there's a process called master planning that I just wanted to talk about a little bit more because we're talking about that as a council. But if you follow all the housing legislation in Salem, like we do most of the time, there was some legislation a couple years ago, HB 2001, that basically gave developers the ability to kind of choose what housing type goes on a property. If it's zoned for single family detached, which is the majority of the housing we have here. So it creates a conundrum for the city in terms of planning, for the types of communities we want. If single family detached is allowed, then the builder can come in and not build that or only build duplexes, quadplexes. We don't want to have the same thing that kind of happened on Roy Rogers up toward Mountain View High School happen here. So one of the reasons we're looking at master planning is that's if you master plan the community, that's kind of your out to have to comply with HB 2001. So that's a process we're going to look really close at. And that would be, working with the community and a lot of outreach to really make sure that we plan that in a way that's compatible with our community today. And so we grow nicely. So that's probably going to be a very important part of that process too. And then just a comment on the Oregon's land use processes. 5 years seems like a long time. Some people would like it to be longer. In other states, it's a lot quicker, but those timeframes are really a function of the regulatory environment that we operate in. I just want to make sure people knew that it's not a choice we're making it as a city, but that it's just kind of how it works.
One other comment I have is even though you showed, hey, we think we'll need this amount of land for schools, is that something that the school district is working on in their budget to figure out, hey, in the next 10 years, we'll need a 10-acre plot of land in Sherwood West or anything like that? Has that been discussed?
Oh, yes. It has been discussed and it ultimately will get folded into the currently undefined future bond needs and bond strategies.
Right.
But very much so, we're aware of that 30-acre and 10-acre need.
Right, and to tie that in also with what the mayor just said, at a certain point, when we're doing our master planning, do we need to say, hey, here's where the school district, given our housing and different things, here's where the school district thinks the schools need to be? Or is it going to just be depending on what's available at the time all of that comes to fruition? We'll worry about it in a few years' time.
So I think it's a combination of on the master plan, if you guys identify generally the locations that those sites would be best for, the problem is we still have to go out and buy the land, and we're at the mercy of that whole process. And I know that many of you have been down different roads and episodes with school districts and land purchase. So we won't belabor the point, but it is complicated, and we will have to not only get authorization for bonds from the community to purchase the land, but then we've got to actually go out and find it. And that's not easy. So we are working on all of that.
It's very similar to what the city has to do in regards to parkland, right? Same kind of a process.
you know, just on the master planning process, that's definitely where we want to have the school district heavily involved, because master planning allows you to get down to, this is where the park's going to be, this is where the school's going to be, this, so we can really lay that out up front. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? No, if anybody listening at home has 10 or 30 acres of land they'd like to donate to future schools, just feel free to let us know.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. You know, it's nice to have you kind of walk through the plan because I know we've seen variations, but they're tiny and they've changed a little bit. So it is nice to kind of see those broken down and expanded a little bit. So we appreciate that. And it looks like you're going to stay put up there to talk about safe routes to school.
I am.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Another passionate thing that I'm doing in Sherwood as a planner is safe routes to school. And I know that I've spoken to you in regards to what that really means as far as safe routes to school, which is basically a program to make it safer for students to walk and bike to school and encourage walking and biking where safety is not a barrier. And there's definitely 6 elements, just engagement, equity, engineering, encouragement, education, evaluation. And that's really the basis in regards to what Safe Routes to School consists of. What have we done since we last met? I'm going to talk about applying for the infrastructure grant through Oregon Safe Routes to School competitive grant, participating in the Bike Enroll to School Day, and also we're going to start Safe Routes to School action plan with Middleton Elementary. Let me just kind of quickly discuss that. So as you are probably aware, the images here is the Middleton Elementary walking zone. And we've identified, especially through the study that we just did through Sunset, the need for certain improvements along Sunset. And one of the key elements that we did identify was the improvements on Trimble Lane, Sunset at Trimble Lane. We estimate that those improvements are going to cost about $371,000. And fortunately, this year, the threshold in regards to a local match has been reduced from 40% to 10.27% for communities that are less than 25,000 in population. Yay for us, because usually the reduction deals with equity, and we're very fortunate that we don't really have a great need in regards to the equity, and we never score well in regards to that. But at least since our population is low, we're able to reduce the local match. So with that, we applied for a grant, a capital grant for that intersection. So 89.73%, $333,000 is what we are asking in regards to for the grant. The proposed improvements, as you can tell, this is the intersection. The previous slide definitely show on the bottom there how the crossing is in diagonal. So we're going to fix that so that it's a better straight shot. And we're going to reconstruct and certify ADA ramps, utility relocation, again, realigning and straightening the crosswalk, enhancing of the pavement markings, striping and signage, removal and relocation of street trees, new street lights. And the best part of this is the installation of a push button rectangle rapid flashing beacon system that crosses Southwest Sunset Boulevard. So RRFB is what we will be proposing. The timeline in regards to grant funding, we had to apply by March 24th, which we did, which is part 1. And then part 2, we're going to know sometime the end of this month because part 2 is going to open on May 6th. So we're hoping that we score well enough and that they ask us to apply for part 2, which is great because our consultant basically says if we can get past part 1, we have a good shot at part 2 because of the need. see. Yeah, so the other aspect, since we're focusing on Middleton and the improvements impacting Middleton Elementary, and also those improvements impacting the middle school too. For Middleton Elementary, we are going to be conducting a Safe Routes to School action plan, looking at those 6 elements. So that's going to start next school year, so August through June. And typically, it's a partnership, right? So you would have a planner, you would have an engineer from the city, typically someone from the police is also involved, typically an SRO officer, the principal. So in this case, it would be Millie, and parent champion, and probably Jim will be at the table in regards to discussing the action plan. But it's once a month for an hour throughout the school year. And the ultimate goal is an actual plan identifying what are the improvements that we can do as far as infrastructure, what kind of encouragement can we do, what kind of educational components can we add so that the Safe Routes to School program can be a success here in Sherwood. But the best part also is the encouragement piece, which on May 8th, we're going to do Safe Routes to School Bike and Roll to School Day. So I invite all of the students and parents to definitely cheer your student on that day for Middleton. We will be providing some giveaways. All the individuals, all the students that are walking, rolling, biking, and riding the school bus will get some type of goodie for their efforts that morning. That's all I have in regards to Safe Routes to School, and I can answer any questions you guys may have. Yes. Right. Well, the reason why the grant, right, is because based on the study that was just conducted in the study along Sunset Boulevard. And I have very specific notes. Let's see. It identified that we did the study, a crosswalk safety study completed by Kittleson and Associates, evaluated the location and recorded a total of 271 pedestrians entering the intersection during the morning and evening peak hours, including 154 pedestrian crossing. Yeah, the peak hours of pedestrian crossing occurred between 12:35 and 1:35 p.m. when 76 pedestrians were recorded crossing Sunset Boulevard. So with a majority of the pedestrians walking to and from Middleton Elementary School and the Sherwood Middle School during those identified peak hours. So we see a need, and there's a safety component of it. And that is why we ended up requesting for a grant, and we are hopeful that we can move on to the next phase. There are also opportunities where we are going to also leverage our local match with Washington County Mistip Opportunity Fund. So that 33,000, we're hoping that they can match that so that our resources, both at the city and at the district, can be utilized in other ways.
So unpopular, I'm sure, question, but has the thought come up to put a stoplight in there, given the amount of speeders on that road?
Yeah, so the study, the transportation system plan actually has a long-term plan for this intersection, and it's a big visual, aspirational, like a roundabout, which is not the same as a full signal, right? So one of the aspects to a signal is extremely expensive in comparison to a rapid flashing beacon. And there has to also be warrants in regards to having a signal versus a rapid flashing. The study basically did ultimately, we even took this in front of the City of Sherwood Traffic Safety Committee, and they also recommended that a rapid flashing beacon be installed in lieu of a full signal. I don't know if Craig has anything else to share.
I don't. I think he answered it good, Joy. I mean, that's really, they looked at that. I mean, the roundabout figure is probably 3 to 4, maybe even $5 million versus this route. And that's one of the reasons why we're moving in this direction right now.
And yeah, I'm not sure I would want a roundabout anyway, but that's a whole other. Yeah, for pedestrians, roundabouts aren't the best.
I would,
Yep, one of the other challenges with the stoplight is because of the proximity to 99, ODOT it has to all go through ODOT, which is a whole nother mess.
We even talked about, like, in front of, well, just down the road here, we have a push button that actually creates a stoplight, which also creates problems with ODOT because it's so close to 99 West. So haven't given up. And I just want to go on the record, I am not a fan of a roundabout there.
Yeah,
For my one vote, but
Yeah, I don't think any of us are.
but for the same reason that if they took that light out that used to go to the movie theater on 12th Sherwood, that was because of ODOT. Because ODOT said it was too close to 99. There was actually a big lawsuit, a 3-year lawsuit over that, that those businesses down there lost in that process. So sometimes our hands are tied, know what we can do.
Any other questions? I don't think we should install any more roundabouts unless you are forced to watch a YouTube video on how to utilize one. They're terrifying in Sherwood.
A roundabout endorsement on your license, is that what we need?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't enter it until you've stopped, watched a YouTube video, and you understand what you're supposed to be doing.
And when you're exiting the roundabout, what are you supposed to do?
Use your turn signal.
Whatever you want, actually, you can just
Not
go
speaking
around.
from experience, just saying.
Well, I love the Safe Routes to School project. I think it's awesome. I think like any city project, it takes a long time for them to be accomplished. And for those of us sitting here listening that like love the idea of the improvement, it's hard to, well, at least for me, I'm impatient. It's hard to listen and be like, oh, how many more years till? But I think it's incredible and I can't wait to see all those things come to be. It'll be amazing for students to have a safer access to their school for sure. And that crosswalk is pretty treacherous for lots of kids. So thank you for being here to share that update. All right, I'm up next. So a quick update on the superintendent search. We had an online survey that was available for about 2 weeks. And over that time, we received over 700 responses, which we were blown away by. Our consultant said that was by far the most he's ever seen in a district of this size. So we were incredibly happy to hear that. We felt like that gave us a really good opportunity to really hear from our community. So we took that into account and we put together our qualities and qualifications. And then we also just read the feedback so that we kind of understood the voice of some of the people who took the time to respond. And that was really informative as well. We also had a community forum that wasn't very well attended, but we kind of figured with it being on a Monday and being last minute that might be the case. So again, we were really happy to see the results come through on the survey. The position's posted currently and it will close on April 22nd. The entire school board is going to be going through an OSBA training on how to work through screening these applicants. It's new to all of us. And so it's really important that we have people come out and train us on how to do it correctly and professionally, confidentially, all the right things. So OSBA will be providing that training for us. By May 1st, we will be selecting our semifinalists. So at this time, as a board, we don't know who's started to apply or who might apply. But by May 1st, we will have come together and selected whoever our semifinalists will be. That following week, we plan on doing interviews with our semifinalists. And then we are going to do our finalist interviews the week of May 13th. So we're just really crossing our fingers that we have some great candidates coming in. We've heard that this is a district that a lot of people have their eye on, and we are really expecting some tremendous applicants. We had some questions at the community forum about whether or not we were going to have some community involvement with the hiring process and with the interviewing process. Some districts do. Some districts also bring the finalists into their districts and kind of, for lack of a better word, parade them around and introduce them to the community and then get community feedback on those finalists. We have made the decision to not do that here in this district. We are going to choose to keep that confidential. Really, the reason was that we want to get the best candidates possible. And what we have learned from talking to professionals in this area is that the best people possible may not apply if it's going to be a public process like that, because they probably have a wonderful job in a district that they love. And that's just not something that they're going to put themselves in a position to do, which makes complete sense to me. And with that being said, I want the best person to apply for this job. So that is more important to me than having them come into our schools and us go to their sites and having this huge group of people weigh in. I also feel really confident in our board. I think right now we really do sit very balanced. And we have very respectful relationships between all five of us, and we're able to have communication. So I feel like we're in a really good place to have these conversations, go through these interviews, really discuss the feedback we've gotten from the community, and make a good selection for this district. So that is where we are at with that. We are hopeful that by May 22nd, we will be voting on that new superintendent. So if everybody can give us good positive vibes, we'll be moving forward with that process. Is there any questions about that process or anything anybody would like to add?
Abby, this is
Yes,
Hans
sir.
Moeller speaking. Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate a couple of points you made, which are
Yes.
really important for people if you are watching this, that it is serious business for the board. We were elected by the community to represent the people here. We are balanced. There are people with many perspectives and lenses. And it is new for us. That was a good point. But we are going to take this very seriously and learn how to do this correctly. And I can assure you that we will. And we're intelligent people and ought to be able to do a good job with this. So it's serious work. It's well outlined. We have good support structure. And although it's not as transparent as some people might wish, the reasons are solid why it's that way. But it's serious. Everyone takes it seriously, and we're going to spend a lot of time with this.
May I? I would just like to say, I applaud that decision. I know when a few years ago, when we went through a hiring process for a new city manager, we also, it was an internal process for many of the same reasons, but also the amount of time that the people that you will all spend on this, and the amount of time that we all spent on that process, dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of poring over resumes, watching video interview. Like, it's an incredible amount of time. And that's what the process deserves, right? Because you've really got to, this is important. And so you've got to spend a lot of time on it. And so I'm glad you're doing this, because it's really hard for someone in the community with the best intentions to come into this process for an hour or 2 hours on an evening, and then all of a sudden have an outsized sway potentially in the process, or turns it into maybe something political, right? Where it shouldn't be. So I think you're doing the right thing. We did the same thing. And again, it's not, we're all elected for a reason, to represent the citizens of this community and this school district. So I applaud you. I think you're doing the right decision there.
I was just gonna piggyback on that as well. As much as community members want to be involved, and I understand that desire to do that, the 1 hour that they're gonna meet is gonna be more on personality or that, and the community doesn't have the benefit of seeing all and hearing all the resources that you guys are gonna have. So I think you've made the right decision, and not everybody might not be happy about that, but it will turn out well. You guys will do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I don't mean this to sound negative, but it wasn't a hard decision, because once we sat down and talked to people who really understand this business and how this hiring process goes, that is what was recommended to us by every person we spoke to. And so I'm not a professional superintendent hirer, so I want to take advice from the people who know what this process looks like. And honestly, it's a really interesting position that we're all in. We don't work in the schools, and we are more of an advisory board, and we do see the inner dynamics of how people's relationships work and how the outside community responds to those relationships. And so it is a tough position to find somebody who will be the right fit. And on paper, there may be somebody who just looks tremendous, but isn't the best fit for this community or the group of leaders that we have in place currently. And I think that we are in a good position to make that judgment because of the amount of time that we spend in these seats and having these conversations. So I think it's gonna go very well.
If you find someone who's half as good as Dr. Lyon, then you will have done a great job.
I know, we love Dr. Lyon and
I will be forgotten.
he will not be. He will not be. And Dr. Lyon has offered to help us as much as he is able to help us. And that is invaluable to us. And certainly his network of people who have done this for years, using them as a resource has been invaluable as well. So Sherwood is in really good hands and, I know we're still mad at him for leaving us, but we're working through it. We're working through it. If that's it, I think as far as superintendent hires go, that is our timeline. We will let you guys know if anything changes. I don't think it will because like you said, it is hours and hours of meetings and it is calendared out to the last second. So I think that is pretty much where it will sit. Anybody else with any other questions, input? No. All right. Then we are going to go back to Dr. Lyon for a demographics report. Exciting. Okay.
Yes, we thought we'd do just a quick overview, 30,000 feet of our demographics, because there's one underlying salient point to the whole thing. Our funding is entirely dependent on the number of students that we have in our school district, period. Other than the bonding and the levies, but the operational, that 60 million comes straight from the formulas at the Oregon Department of Education, and that's where our money comes from. So when Joy is here talking about Sherwood West with 31 to 5,500 homes, and we have what is, I don't know if this is validated lately, the highest per student per home ratio in the state of Oregon, meaning that we essentially get one child per household. That means that if 5,500 homes comes to fruition, as I'm sure it will, this school district will double in size and therefore double in economic resources because everything is dependent on demographics and enrollment. I've been in this business a long time and they're sick of hearing me say this, but you are either a growing school district or a declining school district. You have seen directly as residents of Sherwood what happens with a declining school district in terms of enrollment over the last couple of years. All of those costs that roll up every year, your revenue is rolling down because you're losing students. And that forces your hand to make some really, really tough decisions. So we track our enrollment and we watch those demographics super, super closely because they are the key indicator for Sherwood. And the reason why Sherwood is a destination district is entirely because of the growth that's occurred here that has supported things like this magnificent Sherwood High School. So enrollment is really, really important. And you have a role in city council to manage that and put those pieces together. And it's a very serious role because it's the backbone of our enterprise. It's the backbone of the Sherwood School District. So these are important to you as well. Okay. How do I do it? This is kind of our Bible in regards to demographics. And I want to show you something on this that I won't go long on this. It's a lot of numbers. These are the numbers of kids that come into our system and then go through our system by grade level. Okay. And okay. So if you, a real just easy example, in 2018, 2019, we had 340 kindergartners enter. That's what, 5-6 years ago, right? Historically in Sherwood, that cohort of 340 grows as they go through the system. more come in first grade, more come in second, more come in third, all the way down to their senior year where we exit these very large classes. That's the story of Sherwood, except there's a blip all the way through this chart. 340 goes to 346, goes to 302. What happened? Pandemic, right? And you look at that number right there, there's the 400 students that were lost in the pandemic. This was not a Sherwood singular issue. Tigard Tualatin lost 1,100 kids. Every district in Oregon, every district in the nation lost kids in the pandemic. And the big reveal was they're not coming back. That was the reveal. And we went through that whole thing. We went through, well, let's get them back. We called them up. We tracked them. Where'd they go? Where did these children go? A lot of them went off the grid and remain off the grid. So this is the story of Sherwood in enrollment numbers. Now you see we're flat, right? 4630, 4710, 4692, 4634, 4650. This wasn't a one-time deal. There was a blip, and then we get right back on the growth train. It's the pandemic loss and then flat. But there is good news, and that is that we are one of the few districts in Oregon that's starting to come out, and the projections are now very positive. So next slide. This is where our world intersects with your world. You're working on approving these and looking at all these projects, and we're watching because the total units and the units that are applied in our demographer's forecast are critical to our projections and critical to us building a budget. So the decisions you make absolutely impact the school district in regards to housing. The one that we're talking about, which is not a Sherwood City Council matter, is this Plambeck Gardens. And this is low-income housing over in Tualatin. And we're meeting with them because we are estimating that we're going to get 70 to 100 kids that are going to eventually attend the Sherwood School District. That's good news. That's good news. That's going to start bringing that upwards. So we look at this very closely. Next slide. We watch the maps. And right now, the story of holding our own and growing slightly is all through infill. The projects that you have approved that will result in kids entering our school system. The transfers in, transfers out, we watch that very closely. We allow 30 transfers out. We encourage more than that by a lot in, and we get a lot of transfers in, and they stay and they go through the entire system. So that's a mechanism that helps us. But this infill map is really important to us. And over there is Sherwood West. Again, 31 to 5,500 homes. That leads to new schools, new revenue, new opportunities for kids, and really pretty exciting for the city of Sherwood. And you guys are doing it right in terms of the master plan. So these pieces are all going to come together. And then the last slide is we're really, as a school district, not just Sherwood. And that is sometimes lost to people. And when you look at this amazingly convoluted boundary of a school district, which evolves through farm owners back in the 1800s, early 1900s, getting together and purchasing a teacher to educate their kids. And those fence lines and creek lines are how school district boundaries came to be. They follow no rationale whatsoever. We go to the other side of I-5. We're over by the Costco over there. And so we're pulling kids and serving students everywhere. And this is where some of those bad weather days come from, right? Because we can't get our buses up and down into the hills. So it's fascinating. We always think about Sherwood, but actually in our case, we serve a lot of kids on the outer boundaries. But make no mistake, the great majority of the kids are in the Sherwood city limits. That's where most of the kids reside. We have a new demographic report that they've been right way more than they've been wrong. They hiccuped a little during the pandemic, but everybody did. But we rely on them. We take their estimate, we talk about it internally, we match it to our own estimate, and we arrive at a number that indicates what we want in regards to building a budget with. And so that process is in place. I just wanted to share that. Gary, did I miss anything? Okay. Just kind of an overview of how important building and planning and where those students are and roads and all of that, we are interconnected that way very, very closely. So we appreciate that relationship. Joy left, but I appreciate her working on that safe routes to schools. She's done a great job with that. So questions or comments?
Could you turn on the mic?
I just wanted to say that because of the development that's out there and that's planned and active over the next several years, the growth of our student enrollment looks better than it has in the past, and so that's a big factor in it.
So I had a question about some of the remote areas. It looks like down into Wilsonville and other areas. Are those very specific areas that Wilsonville's not able to service, or that Tualatin's not able to service, or I guess why have we not updated the boundaries based on something beyond cow paths? Is a question, I guess.
And the simple answer to that is because the moment that a school district comes into being and starts taxing the citizens, whether it's bonds or levies, you're locking into place those boundaries. And so we do engage in conversations with other school districts. And I've been involved in many of those where there's a lot of logic for quote unquote tweaking the boundaries that makes more common sense. The problem is you have said to your taxpayers that we're all going to share this burden of a levy or a bond. And if you start having boards change those boundary lines, you're changing that promise one way or another. There is no logic to these school district boundary maps. Some states have corrected it. For example, Florida has county districts. They don't have independent school districts. They don't have separate districts. If the county gets the school district, that takes legislative action. And really, if you wanted to clean up the boundary lines of Oregon schools, it would take legislative action.
I just want to add on to that. These boundary lines are so convoluted because like out in Tualatin, you're crossing the freeway in that Norwood area. That's because that boundary was established before Tualatin High School was ever built. Same with Wilsonville High School. Those were opened in like the early 90s, and these boundaries for Sherwood were well before that time. So that's why you have, and then once you have them, why would you give up that tax revenue? That's why these kids from Norwood are being bussed in at like 6:30 in the morning, because we're not letting them go. I mean, my daughter rides a bus with a Norwood girl, and she's the last stop at 8:10. I'm like, when did you get on the bus? 5 a.m., every morning. So yeah, those, I would like question someone's sanity on the board of changing these types of boundaries, because once you have that tax revenue, you shouldn't let it go, because you're trying to make it fair, but nobody else is fair in any other district. So it just comes with new schools being built over time, over a long period of time.
And that's a great point. And we are very proud of the educational services that we provide for every one of these students. And we like the fact that the students in Tualatin and Planbeck Gardens are going to have an opportunity to experience Sherwood schools. That's a really positive thing for us. So we work collegially with all the districts, surrounding districts, but we all know that we're in a bit of a box, that we can tweak boundaries here and there fractionally, but you cannot really change them. And if you wanted to change them, it would require both boards in agreement to change those boundaries. And that, I have never seen that successfully happen other than in little tweaking kind of tiny quarter acre things that just really make sense and didn't impact either district. It was a wash. Any other questions?
Yes. Can you speak to the student absences since COVID and if there's correlation causation for the enrollment numbers?
Absolutely. There's a great narrative story that is so discouraging, frankly, in American public education, and that is the pandemic erased the foundational principle of you must go to school, compulsory attendance, required attendance. And we have seen in Oregon, in a recent study, is the leader in chronic absenteeism. And that's a measured number. And it's not a good thing. We have, and anecdotally, the comments by parents who were quoted in this study is that school attendance has gone from compulsory to optional. You have a sniffle, you don't feel good, take the day off. You can get your assignment online, you can get it from a friend, take the day off. We are working really hard to reestablish this idea that success begins with you showing up and being there. And we all know that. That's what we were foundationally, that drove us. And we want to get back to that. Comparative to other school districts in Oregon, we are doing really well in Sherwood. We have less chronic absenteeism than the vast majority of school districts. And it's a urban problem in a huge way. It's less of a suburban problem, and it's not as great a problem in rural counties and rural school districts. So it is A1. It's something that it's the number one goal of Sherwood High School this year is to improve student attendance. And they're doing it. They have significantly improved student attendance this year. But it is tough. We have to get back to this expectation of students waking up and going to school. But the attitudes of parents and the attitudes of kids have changed dramatically. And the workforce, for sure. Yeah.
Well, and imagine years from now, when those students enter the workforce. Right? I mean, it starts at home. And so that's why it's so important for parents to hear this message.
Yeah.
Of, power through. You gotta show up.
It's very discouraging because, there's so much research out there. Learning takes a dip when the teacher's not there, right? Substitute teacher does as good a job as they can, but learning takes a dip. Well, we are in a human enterprise business. We need our students in front of our teachers every day. And that's something that we talk about a lot. Different strategies. How do we do that? How do we re-incentivize or encourage kids? And I'll tell you one thing Sherwood has that's helping us. We have strong extracurricular programs. And if you look at the research on school attendance and participation in fine arts, sports, clubs, and activities, there's your silver bullet. That's where you improve it, is you make sure that you have strong extracurricular activities and ways for kids to get involved out of the classroom, because then they are motivated to get to school. As I was, school meant basketball. And that was a big driver, right? For many of us. So.
I'm going to date myself, but I remember the concept of a truant officer.
Oh, yes.
And, I remember in high school, you were afraid you'd be seen by a police officer because they were going to Ty, you want to sign up for that, by the way? But you were afraid because they were going to ask, why aren't you in school? Yeah.
Think about how far we've come from a truant officer for school districts to now attendance as optional.
I can just imagine the extra workload that is on our teachers too. You have, let's say, 4 students gone one day. They keep on teaching the class, but then when these 4 students return, they have to back up and get those students caught up. That's tremendous. Is the school district still have the rule that if you're not in school that day, you can't go to your sports practice or game or whatnot? Yeah.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a little bit dependent on the sport. Some are stricter than others. Like, I mean, I have a son in baseball right now, and if he leaves for an appointment and doesn't come home back with a letterhead, he is not going to get to participate. So, I mean, some are certainly more strict than others.
There's OSAA rules as well.
Yeah.
On attendance.
But our school district, we are getting like so many attendance reports now. If you have a student in school here in Sherwood, you're getting emails with attendance reports. If your kid misses, half the time, even if I send an email or a call, I mean, I'm getting a text message, an email, I'm getting a phone call. There's no way I'm not gonna know that my kid did not somehow just show up to first period for whatever reason. So the school district is really on it. You know, one thing I talk about with my kids with the whole sickness thing, and I know we don't have necessarily like, well, I don't think we have health nurses in the same capacity we did when I was in school. But now that kids have phones, I'll get like the text or the call that says like, can you come get me? I don't feel good. And I always have that conversation about, they think I'm the meanest mom ever, but I'm like, I don't really care. I mean, you have to get through it. Like, I don't really feel good today either. And I still made you breakfast. Like, you just still have to do those things. And I always tell my kids, I'm like, unless you have fever or you're like throwing up, like most people still have to attend to work just the same. And so you need to kind of carry on. And I'll say like, go to the office. They're like, you can't just go to the office. I'm like, sure you can. If you're sick enough, the office will call me. Like, go, so I don't know if parents know anymore how to coach their kids through that. And certainly when I suggest that to my kids, elementary, sure, but middle or high, they think I'm crazy to tell them that they should like go to the office and have a conversation with anybody else prior to leaving. And so I don't know how to build that conversation with kids about expectations and toughness. I don't know.
I was actually really impressed today because even though it was like a true half day, not an early release, classes were less than 30 minutes each. And I asked my freshman, I said, how was school? And he goes, I had 2 tests today in like 20 minutes. And I was like, that's awesome. Because, and he was like, and they counted like it was legit tests. And he goes, and we had no idea they were coming. I'm like, even better. I love it. So it just proved that like you can accomplish a lot in 4 hours. So
What are you seeing in regards to students and mental health?
Students and mental health.
Mhm.
I don't have a direct line on it. I believe what the professionals tell me, that it's not great, that our kids are very anxious, very fragile in some regards. And, I see it when I talk to students to some degree. But I really can't speak to it. Marlene, do you have anything you would want to add? It's a lot better than when we first came back. We're getting back on our feet, and we have really good systems in place that help students. And I think those systems are working.
I just want to piggyback on that just from an athletics or activity standpoint. And I know it's not just where I'm working, but I know it's at every school where our coaches now are trying to come at our kids in a way where the disappointment of being cut in a position or being taken out because you're just not the best for that spot. They now have to have conversations that shield this child from how are they going to take this and go home and feel about themselves, where before we didn't used to have to do that. It was like, hey, Johnny, you lost your spot. So-and-so's just making the cut and doing better. And now our coaches are refining their conversations specifically to each child about, can they handle this emotionally? So that's just how we've changed over the years, which is, it's frightening too. I mean, it is. It's a whole new level of like, what is a coach? It adds another layer to their job, and And it's a lot to ask of people as we keep going.
Okay. Since we have veered away from demographics, I'm going to assume we don't have any questions left regarding demographics. But our last item on our agenda is really just roundtable, and that seems what we've kind of transitioned into anyway. So I'll just open it up this point. It's just for us to have any conversation and chat about things that are going on, questions, ways we can help each other out. So I will open up the floor to anybody who wants to say anything. Nobody wants to say anything.
Hey, I was gonna save this for after I reported to the council, but one of the most interesting things that happened to me in DC was I had a chat with the group of youth from the Hillsborough School District that were essentially part of a Hillsborough Youth Committee, Advisory Committee. And so I've talked a little bit to Craig about this, and I think he was going to pass some stuff along to Kristen, but I would love for us to reach out to, I think Lake Oswego had one there as well. Just how they were organized. It was very simple. They decided their subcommittees at the beginning of the year. You stayed on the subcommittee for the year. And one of the projects that really impressed me is they said, well, we started off the year, we had a committee that wanted to focus on solving homelessness. And, you know, that's a big problem to solve. And so the advisor was able to kind of bring them down and say, well, you know, what's a problem we can solve within this year? And one of the things that they came up with was, you know, there's a lot of the parents of those kids work at Nike, like at our you know, school districts. And every year there's this massive amount of sweatshirts and leftover jackets and stuff like that that all get donated to Goodwill. And they said, well, what if we made a closet and we had it all organized by, you know, we cleaned all the stuff, and instead of donating it to Goodwill, we donated it to this closet that some of our kids who need jackets could come shop in, essentially for free. And so the school district donated a closet. The city council gave them $500 for lumber and stuff like that, and the kids figured out how to organize it and make sure that it, you know, obviously if stuff had names in it, it would get back to the people that lost it. But it was a great idea of some kids coming up with an idea that was impactful to the city, helped their fellow students and things like that. So I would love to, as we look at things that we need to keep going after Dr. Lyons leaves, that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we keep iterating on to try to make sure that our youth have the ability to make an impact on some of those projects. And there's several others that I'll talk about at a future time, but that's just a quick report from my trip to DC and meeting with some of the other youth councils.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing with us. I think it's really amazing when we can get groups of kids together to work on these projects. My only caveat with that is that when, you know, a board member or someone from the city ties into these kids, that they kind of really see them through that project, because I know there's nothing worse than being a kid who feels strongly about something and then you feel frustrated because you want to make change, you want it to happen, and then you're just missing bits and pieces along the way on how to accomplish that task. And so I think it's amazing. I just want someone to stick with those kids and help them kind of see it through a little bit. Because we meet kids all the time who have great ideas, but these kids are also extremely busy with all of their other activities at the school. And so trying to figure out a way to marry the two of those things together it's difficult.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the things that they said to address that is obviously they had, you know, a few adults that were there to kind of advise them, but a lot of the people who were leading subcommittees now as upperclassmen had participated in those as freshmen and sophomores. And so they were actually, now they knew where some of those gotchas were, and they knew who to go to and stuff like that. So again, we've talked about this, about how to get some people that are not just there for the 1 year hey, it looks good on my resume kind of a thing. And so I would just even, as we look to see, both the Lake Oswego and the Hillsborough one said that they'd love to send people to our youth advisory council and talk to leadership or other kids or whatever to say what they'd done. So again, it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel. We can steal the good ideas from our neighbors.
That's really cool.
So
Thank you for sharing that with us. I love that idea. All right. Is there anybody else who wants to share something with us? Yes, yes. For a second.
Okay. So some of you have mentioned the baseball season has started here in Sherwood, and my son plays baseball, and he has the last 2 seasons as well. The last 2 seasons he was over at Ridges practicing. This year he's at Hawksview. And I have noticed over the last 3 years, the deterioration of the infields for the baseball fields. So much so that the first 2 practices this year, at the fields here, the kids were pulling weeds, to start the practice because the infields were unusable. Even today, when I dropped him off before this meeting, the left infield is still really unusable for practice. And that's just because of the weeds. The Sherwood Junior Baseball Organization has contracted a landscaping company, in addition to the fees that they're paying the school district to use the fields. They're bringing in between 40 and 45 yards of sandy loam soil to bring the infields back to essentially usable condition, so that they're safe for the students, the athletes. It's my understanding that the school district is responsible for maintaining the fields. And that has been this way for the past few years. Prior to that, there was an agreement between the school district and the city, where the city was maintaining the fields. And so I think that we're all wanting to have the fields in a usable condition, safe condition for our athletes. And so I guess I'd like to have a discussion to see if maybe having an agreement between the school district and the city would be something that would be beneficial for the community at large.
Jim, do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Go from Joy to Dr. Lyon. It's a little bit of a back and forth. Are we still on or not? I can't tell. Okay. I appreciate bringing up that question. That is one of the ongoing interesting things in this community related to fields and sports. And there's a bit of a history there, which is when we took over from our previous landscape organization, the fields for youth sports, the infields in particular, were in such poor condition that we reached out to the youth baseball and youth softball and gave them the opportunity for a discount to prep the fields for the season. And then we've continued that the last 3 years as a courtesy to them so they can keep their fees down as much as possible. I do believe that they're spending this weekend to do their actual beginning of the year field prep. Today was the first I'd heard of them contracting with another service. I'd love to have known that because we actually have our own athletic field company that's doing most of our work, and I don't want things to conflict with what Pacific Sports Turf does. I've heard that, oh, well, we just don't do anything, or we're doing the minimal. And I will share that in the last month, we have fertilized, we have rolled, we have slice seeded, we have filled holes, aeration has happened, and we've done a ton of work on irrigation. I spent half this afternoon with an irrigation, with a pump company, as well as our athletic turf company, trying to troubleshoot an irrigation pump issue that we have at the Ridges. Coming up, we're going to keep working on the irrigation. That is a significant problem that we're trying to solve because when we took the control back, we were not left with the controllers for the actual irrigation. And so that has been a couple different iterations between Crystal Greens, which is our landscaper, and now Pacific Sports Turf, who's doing our athletic turf. So we're getting that piece in line. So there will be a lot of irrigation work in the next month. And then we're doing crabgrass treatment. We'll continue to seed, sand, fill holes as we receive those. So We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on this particular project. Those are non-academic spaces. They are used for community parks, and a school district is paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to support them. So I'm very interested in making sure that they are safe and ready for our kids. If we need to change so that way baseball and softball are not maintaining those in the beginning of the year, we can do that. We'll contract that with our company. So,
Would you be open for discussion to have the city do the maintenance again and partner with the school district instead of an outside contractor?
not at this point, is the conversations we've had over the last couple of years. We want to maintain our fields. We want to maintain ownership and control of our fields and courts and those kinds of things.
Is the school district responsible for the infields as well then, or is that on the organizations themselves?
Well, like I said, the last 3 years, the organizations have started their year by doing a field prep day where they come in, get the infields ready to go,
Right.
do their lining, put their bases in, those kinds of things. So, and traditionally, like at the high school level, our coaches always wanted to maintain their own infields. We had quite an issue with that about 7 years ago, where we had to actually come to an agreement where our high school coaches got to control the infields, the city controlled the outfields. And we drafted an agreement to go along with the previous IGA. I don't know if we ever actually signed it, but we did come to that agreement where our coaches maintain that. Now, at the high school level, it's a JV field that's
Right.
natural grass and dirt. So it's less of an issue at the high school now.
Okay, thank you.
This dovetails into a different conversation, but related to this, that's been on my mind for a very long time. When I grew up in Oregon, when I was a kid, we had middle school sports. That all ended in Oregon, I think in the 90s or maybe early 2000s, something like that. Yet we continue to build middle schools with sports facilities. And as you pointed out, it costs a lot of money, not just to buy the land, but also to maintain it all. Why are we doing it? Like, maybe there's a reason that I'm not aware of, but wouldn't it make more sense instead of buying 30 acres for a middle school to buy 15 and build a middle school? And if the city needs more ball fields, then the city should do that. But yet it seems like everyone's just stuck in this like, well, we always build sports facilities with middle schools because we've always done it that way, even though we don't have middle school sports anymore. Maybe you can answer why we still do that.
That is a fantastic question, Doug. I don't know, but
Well, just one point of emphasis, we do offer and are required to offer physical education. We build gymnasiums and fields for that purpose as much as anything, but in Sherwood, there hasn't been a middle school that's been built.
Well, Ridges originally.
But other than urban environments, in suburban school districts, you're not gonna see a middle school that's not built without comprehensive gymnasium space and outdoor fields. Whether it's community use, it's still the kids of that community, whether
Sure.
it's the school district or.
I guess I would argue you could, the gym, of course, but some outdoor space for physical education and whatnot, but you could probably shrink the footprint considerably if you didn't have to have a track and 3 fields and a bunch of tennis courts and all that. Like, again, just a thought that's been bugging me for 10 years.
I am all for activities at every level, and I'm probably gonna get daggers for saying this, but I really, really wish that at the beginning of each season that and I know it's not me, but I'm happy to be there, would make time to meet with the organizations a month or so prior to that activity beginning to have some of these conversations, because without fail, every season, every sport has issues with field usage or quality of fields or why I'm not getting practice time or what equipment they have going on. And some of it really is avoidable, and it normally results in like pretty negative feelings before we get to that point. And so I know we did try a little over a year ago to have a meeting with everybody at once. That was really hard because everybody selfishly really just had their own gripes, and it was kind of a waste of time for everybody else at the table. But it would be lovely to see like baseball have a conversation and explain. I know you want to answer me so badly as to why you don't want to do that, but okay. I just feel like these kind of things would be amazing because it is a ton of work. like JBO, I mean, it's like, it's all volunteers. It's all a bunch of dads. Everybody's doing on top of their jobs. And then they go and they're so frustrated and it just sucks, you know, and I know none of us want that.
Chair Hawkins, I am sorry I have not shared this with you, but yes, starting in the winter sports, we did just that. About a month before their season starts, Cheryl Templeton from our facilities department and myself sat down with every group individually because we did realize after last spring's all call kind of group meeting that each did have their own needs and their own kind of quirks to their scheduling and those kinds of things. And we wanted the opportunity to really work through them with on the Facilitron, which is the scheduling software that we use, their needs for fields and space, those kinds of things. And frankly, this spring, we did ask them some questions about their finances and how their organizations are set up, because we felt as a school district, it was important, given some of the local events that we've seen, to have an idea of how these organizations are funded, what are fees, how that impacts them versus kind of some of their other expenses they might have. So those conversations have been ongoing. We haven't hit the fall sports yet. We'll do that probably middle of summer. But we did cheer. We've done baseball, softball, basketball, lacrosse. I think I'm missing one more. All single individual meetings. Yeah.
But did
So-
you guys baseball?
Yeah.
So
I would-
I'll stand up a little bit for the middle school track program. I'm the middle school long jump and high jump coach. And my wife's the head coach. But part of it is, as Dr. Lyons just pointed out, for some of the kids on that track team, it is the highlight of their day. It is not a sport they can get cut from. We're trying to push everybody, you know, based off of their own things and stuff like that. So I believe that there's a place in the community for those kinds of spaces, even though, you know, I don't personally use the baseball fields, but I see value in having them in the community. You know, yeah, I don't know if I'm using them.
Having those spaces, I was arguing that it's not middle school track. It's not. It's a separate organization that serves middle school kids. It has no affiliation with the school outside of the contractual rental. So my whole point was, does it make sense if we build a new middle school for the middle school to build a track and maintain it, or does it make sense for the community, the city, to build a track and maintain it? That's my only point, Taylor. I agree with you on track. Like, we should have track.
Yeah, no, I'm tying it back to Dr. Lyons' point of saying, as we're trying to get kids to attend school, I worry about, you know, cutting into the lack of maintenance of the outdoor spaces. So anyway, that's just my thought, but I get that, Jim, that it's a bottomless pit in some ways.
I spoke with the JBO president the other day to kind of get some information about what was happening with this situation. And he has emailed the school district. I'm not sure who he's trying to contact, but he did not get any responses after X amount of days. And that is when the contract was, you know, kind of stopped for fixing the infields. So I don't know who is supposed to be the liaison between the two parties, but I think that making sure that communication is happening in between the two is great.
Yeah, that email came in Friday afternoon late, and I reached out to that individual today and did not hear back. So
Okay.
It's taken a couple days to get back to him. That is correct.
Okay.
Well, sounds like we resolved that.
No, there's work to be done.
There
We'll
is
get
work to be done, but I think that I know it's tough for me. My kids all do sports. I'm all for athletics, but it is hard when you have community members approach you and ask you questions that you don't have a clue what the answer is. And a lot of times it is a link in the communication.
There's a lot of misinformation.
Mhm.
Two sides to every story kind of thing.
Absolutely. And so it's good to flush it out here and kind of figure out what's going on. And obviously that's something that we can improve. I'm thrilled to hear that you're meeting with each sport, activity, athletics, whatever, before their season.
Taylor reminded me the last group that we met with was in fact track. So
Good job.
I remember, and I don't know if it's still the case, my kids are grown and out of college at this point, but I remember other teams coming to Sherwood and raving about playing on Sherwood Fields because they were so nice, but I haven't seen fields in a while, so I don't know what they look like anymore, but I just remember it was something that Sherwood was very proud of, so.
Yeah.
I'm
we
a
do have
soccer guy.
amazing
I-
Facilities.
You're a soccer guy?
I'm a soccer guy. So between the 4 turf fields that the district has and the one the city has, I can't believe we haven't attracted more tournaments to Sherwood.
Yeah.
Marketing.
Marketing, and we got to get a couple more hotels.
But thanks for all you do, Jim. I know it's a hard job.
It's a hard job.
Thanks for your time.
Just one more quick comment on that, just kind of going back to Sherwood West, when we talked about the hospitality zoning. We didn't mention it in the presentation, but another thing we're looking at is making sports a center point for the community as well. And are there additional facilities? I'm partial to ice skating, because I had a daughter that came up as an ice skater, but there might be some opportunities in that hospitality area as well to promote sports, youth sports in the community.
And I also think that, I mean, if we're getting an email on a Friday afternoon and taking a day or two to respond, you know, there has to be grace given on both sides for timelines and notice and all of those things to make a partnership work. So, I think that's important to consider as well. And you know, especially if it's that big of an issue, you know, give a couple days to allow a response, because this, you know, Jim's not just managing fields, he's managing an entire district of facilities. So I know that just from my own personal experience in working with Jim, that he really wants to make these relationships work with the individual organizations. And so, I mean, I believe that wholeheartedly. So I think that just open communication is the most important thing to accomplishing that, and giving time for responses, because you know, that's just a courtesy. So yeah. What was I going to say before? Oh, I was going to thank the Sherwood Police Department, because you know, we hear about things that are going on, and your presence in the community and in the schools, and your response times and your diligence is, we're very grateful for that. And so thank you for having such an amazing team over there. Very grateful to all of your officers for being so involved, and we're lucky to have you guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Maybe the next time we meet, it would be, you know, we've had a second SRO now for this school year, right? It'd be great to get some feedback from the board on and staff on what are the impacts of that been, right? And again, we're too late now, but next meeting, that'd be
That's a
great.
great idea. All right. I don't know if anybody, and not to belabor the baseball thing, I just heavy on my heart. I feel like I have to say this. I don't have a kid currently in JBO. And actually, none of my kids have played for JBO in a while, but
We both used to, so we know.
it's been a few years
Yeah.
for me, but still, I know the community is very aware of the situation that JBO is in, and I feel for them. I mean, they have reached out to ask for help with fundraising and things like that, and I told their president, it's a tough situation to be in. It's not the same situation that we were in the school district, but it's tough to inherit something and find out that you need to figure out your way around it. There's no doubt about that. And so I really do hope that the community supports that organization. I mean, those kids are ultimately the ones who are lacking because of that. Nothing to do with fields, but that whole organization is just heavy on my heart. And I hope that I'd love to see some efforts to kind of help fundraise and support those kids, because I don't know what their current financial situation is, but they've definitely lost a lot. So.
Yeah, and I'll go on the record saying that if there are things coming up that are fundraising efforts and stuff, I mean, I have a big place in my heart for Sherwood JBO. My kids went through that whole program. I was one of those frustrated parents with the fields once, you know, and that's why I say, just through my experience in working with Jim, because we've had a lot of conversations about that. But, you know, feel free to you know, open the lines of communication with the district and the board about, you know, ways that we can participate in helping those kids, because they're important. piece of our community, and it really is unfortunate what's gone on, and
Is there maybe an opportunity using the CEP grant program to help out with that? Well, there you go. Got 4 days.
so.
It's a community enhancement.
Yep.
Oh, so it's a community enhancement program that's funded by, it's a partnership with Metro. And so then we're given $1 back or something per, I can't remember the exact
Usually
ratio.
about 100,000 a
It's
year.
part of your
Yeah, it's
garbage bill.
80 to $100,000 a year, and once a year, we accept grant applications to fund programs for nonprofits and city departments. We usually try to fund nonprofits over, but if we don't have enough, sometimes we can do some city stuff as well. But we've funded arts programs, Foundation, Voice It for the Performing Arts. We've done the, is it Middleton or one of the schools who goes out to the farm?
Farm to table.
Farm
Farm
to
to
Table
Table.
program. We funded that for many years, Robin Hood Festival. So yeah, it is an opportunity.
Did some upgrades to the
So
American Legion
who
building.
at Sherwood JPO should,
I mean, if they go online to the city website and, or just Google Sherwood Community Enhancement Program, it will link them to an application. They fill out an application. It is, our deadline is Monday
okay,
by 5 o'clock.
But it's, I mean, we're talking a few pages. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's like 5 pages long
so
with
that would be a
questions.
good thing to pass on to the current president.
Yeah, I discussed that with the treasurer and the president in regards to this.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, and maybe they're not currently lacking. Maybe everything's fine. I just, I'd like to see that program continue on and do well. There's a lot of kids who utilize it, so. A lot of baseball fields in this town.
And I love driving by in the spring and seeing the baseball happening. It's a big part.
For sure.
If only we had a pizza joint that they could go celebrate their games afterwards.
Oh my gosh, we've been saying that forever. We need Bowman Pizza.
After the baseball game, do you want to?
I keep saying, somebody's gotta put a pizza joint where that Old Rose's Deli is. That would be a perfect place for a pizza joint. So.
Great idea. All right. Are there any other topics of conversation for this evening? It doesn't sound like it. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, for hanging out with us. This meeting is adjourned.
You'd be surprised at how many people think the city council's job